Hi, this is Robbie with Tickner Photography. I had a photo idea last night while I was driving home to use a heart-shaped block of ice. So I have these little heart-shaped things I use to bake with, and I thought I would fill it with water to create a little heart-shaped block of ice, and then put it on a red piece of paper with a little hole in it and blast light up through it from beneath. So the block of ice will be basically backlit, but it's underlit, and should have some of the red color from the paper. And I thought it would be kind of a cool effect and kind of an interesting themed idea. You're like melting my heart or something like that. So with any luck, you'll be seeing kind of my final product over here. And now we'll attempt to create it. I've been experimenting a little bit, and this should be pretty easy to do. I used a red piece of paper, and I cut out a little heart shape, as you can see. And then with a razor, I cut a smaller piece out of the piece that I cut out and taped it back into place. So there's just a little heart outline there. So I'm going to set the paper down on a box that I can put my flash underneath. I'll use plastic wrap or something to protect the flash from any water drops that come from the melting ice. And then I will blast the flash up through this little hole with a block of ice sitting on top of it. And that will be our only light source. The ice should refract the light and illuminate a little bit of the paper, and I'm going to be using a speed light relatively close, so it will actually shine through the paper a little bit. So we'll see what this actually looks like. So here's the box I'm going to put my stuff on. I have my speed light here with a radio trigger attached. Because it's going to be covered with paper, it can't optically trigger, so we're going to use radio triggers. And I'll have it about on 1/8 of a power. It's going to be really close to this paper, but since we're only letting a little bit of light through, shouldn't be too bad. And hopefully at 1/8 of a power, it'll also illuminate some of the paper just shining right through it. So let's set this up. Alright, so our speed light is now in there, covered with plastic. We'll cover it up with our heart-shaped design, and now let's go get our ice block. So here's my little baking dish that's heart-shaped, and I have water in here, and I let it freeze for a little while. So it created a nice heart-shaped block of ice. It's not exactly transparent, but I think that'll actually give it a cooler effect. First, I'll show you what it looks like without any ice there, so you'll see how it illuminates the paper itself. Alright, so there you can see that some of the light is coming through the paper. It gives this kind of cool red aura. So now we'll stick our ice block on top of it. So now I'm just going to cycle through different f-stops to effectively increase or decrease the amount of light that the camera is seeing from the flash. I'm using 1/250th of a second, the maximum sync speed, so we're cutting out as much of the ambient light in the room as possible. I'm also on ISO 50. And then I'm going to cycle through from f2.8 all the way to f22 at probably 3 or 4 stop intervals. And I'm doing this so effectively doing a high dynamic range image that I'll merge together in Photoshop with a couple different shots. I like the f2.8 shot. It's getting some lens flare on it, but it gives this kind of neat aura. It kind of has an emotional feel to it. And then all the way down at f22, you can really see the ice quite well. It's not blown out. So by merging different aspects of that, we'll be able to pull in the different pieces of the picture that we like, and hopefully create something with a little bit of emotion in there. So now I'm going to take a few more shots from f2.8 to f22, and then we'll take them into Lightroom and then Photoshop. And now into Lightroom we have our 7 shots with varying f-stops. So the depth of field may change a little bit, but the light, you can tell, decreases substantially. So if we look at this, here's our f22 shot. The ice is looking pretty cool, and a little bit is blown out, but it's not too bad. And then as we stop through our other shots, you can see a lot more light is coming through, but the center ice is being blown out. At 5.6, now we can see the light. This light is mostly shining through the paper. And then our 2.8 shot, our block of ice is blown out, but it has this cool aura that will be interesting to integrate into our final shot. So we'll go back to our grid, and that's what we're going to be aiming for. So I isolated this down. I think we can construct this image with these 4 shots. This shot, or this image and this image, will be mostly for the ice block itself. This image will be mostly for the red aura and the paper, maybe a little bit of the outer ice block, and this one will only be used for the aura because everything else is kind of blown out. So now we'll open all of these as layers in Photoshop. Okay, so we've got our images as layers now in Photoshop. First thing we want to do is align them to make sure as we're doing our layer masks, everything just kind of works. So now everything should be auto-aligned. Auto-alignment typically moves things a little bit around, so we're going to need a black background layer behind everything, just so the edges don't look kind of funny, and we'll clone around them later. So now we have to pick our main background plate, and I think this top image is it. So I'm going to move that to the background. So this is the plate that will have the background and the natural vignette in here, and then we'll work with this background to get rid of most of it. So now we'll add in the ice. Here is our F22 shot. So this one I will use for most of the inner ice. And we'll do that by adding a layer mask. I will invert the layer mask, and then we'll paint this in real quick with white.
Okay, that's already looking a lot better.
Okay, and now our F10 image. So the center is more blown out, but I like how its outer edge is looking. So that's what we're going to use this one for. So we're going to add another layer mask. We're going to invert that to make it completely invisible. I'm going to drop my opacity just a smidge, and now we're going to paint in the edges of this guy. And this is really quick and dirty layer masking. We'll also paint around the outside here, and we'll see which version of this I like most. Okay, so that's not too bad right there. I've overmasked a little bit on the outside edges, so I need to restore that. But for the most part, that's not too bad. Okay, and now we need our haloed effect, so we'll do that. And this one I'm going to paint kind of backwards, just because it's easier. So I'm going to paint out this halo, and then I'm going to invert that layer, drop the opacity a fair amount. Starting to get the idea with how that works. Alright, and now we're going to change the blend mode of this aura to make it look a little bit more natural. I found difference works best, so there we go. Got a little bit of where it's bleeding over, so we'll erase that. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So now we're going to need to start cleaning things up. This is a baseline version that is working pretty good, but I don't like this paper very much down here where it transitions from being underlit and looking really cool to looking like blah paper with this white reflection. We'll start by creating a new layer that all of our cloning is going to appear on, and now we are going to start cloning some of this stuff down. And that's starting to look quite a bit better. And we'll do the same on this side. Alright, so we're getting pretty close. I want to blur this up a little bit, so we're going to create a merged layer set of all of this. So Control-Alt-Shift-E merges all of the layers, all the visible layers into one layer. So now we have our merged layer on top. We can do a Gaussian blur, say 14, let's try 10-ish. Okay. Now from here we can drop our opacity some, and we can layer mask out what we don't want blurred. So we don't want our heart blurred, so we just remove the layer mask that's blurring it. Drop opacity from the outside. And we're getting pretty close. We can increase our vignette just a little bit and give it a little crop, but I think that's close to a final image. So I hope you found this somewhat interesting. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Otherwise, like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.